Hey guys, I'm Stefan, and in this video I want to talk to you about all the places from where you can source sheet music for piano, whether it's classical or pop. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and if you like what you see, give this video a thumbs up. So obviously, as eager pianists, we all want sheet music to play from, unless you're one of those lucky people who can learn anything just by listening to it or by visually memorizing. Picking sheet music is not actually easy because there are so many different editions and some of them are much better than others. So in this video, I'm going to break it down first for the classical pieces, and in the second half of the video talk a little bit about pop sheet music as well. Every company I'm going to talk about, I'm going to have a link to it in the description below so you can visit their website, and for each category I'm going to mention a few companies or publishers, not companies, because some of them might be more available in your area, some of them might be cheaper, but I'm going to tell you which one is my favorite and why. So let's start with classical piano sheet music. Now I'm going to break this into two categories, beginner and more advanced. If you don't want to spend on sheet music, then you can access all classical sheet music from before the 1940s or 50s on imslp.org. So that's kind of a library of all the classical music that has been published before the 1940s. It depends on the publisher, but I think 75 years is the copyright term. So anything that was published before is not under copyright and you can freely download it and print it. If you are tight on budget and you don't want to have printed books, or if you just want to use the sheet music on your iPad, then imslp.org is your best source for any kind of classical piano sheet music. They have millions and millions of PDFs. It's very well categorized and you can download it for free. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now, if you want to have books, I've got three favorite publishers, and one of them is ABRSM, and they have the ABRSM logo in the corner of all of their publications, and they have lots of standard collections, like the Burgmüller and so on, but they also have their own kind of teasers. So this one is like 25 easy pieces by Mozart. They have 25 easy pieces by someone else. So instead of like looking in 5 different books, they pick all the beginner or intermediate pieces into one book. The second one is Schirmer's performance editions. These are the new ones. The old ones are all yellow, and this new edition, well, not very new, but the yellow one is like 100 years old, but these ones are quite recent. In the past decade they started coming up, and they are re-engraved, really well laid out, and they have a lot of extra information. That's why it's called a performance edition, because if you play a piece, they're going to talk about the ornaments, they are going to talk about the historical background of the piece, and obviously are very accurate editions. Now, my absolute favorite is Alfred's Masterworks edition, which looks like this. It's always a big title at the top, some kind of art in the middle, and it says Masterworks in the bottom. It's very similar to Schirmer's editions, but I think this one is slightly cheaper. And what I love about this edition is that they separate what's in the original score and what's editorial suggestions. So if you look at this minuet here, you can see that you've got some faint gray slurs and finger numbers and all of that, and the dark black is what the composer actually wrote, and the gray is what the editors think would be suitable, because many editions, especially the ones in IMSLP, the older ones, they are full of editorial suggestions which are not actually written by the composer, but they were kind of standard at the time when those pieces were published or the sheet music was published. Why would you want to invest into these books if you can get all of this for free on IMSLP? Here is why. Let me show you one difference. So here is a Bach book by Alfred's Masterworks. So the ABRSM edition, which is also very good, is not always laid out very well for beginners. So here is the minuet in G, which is one page in this book, and here is the same minuet in G in the Alfred's edition, and let me try to put it here. And as you can see here, it's 2 pages and it's much nicely laid out. It's bigger notes, more spaced out, so it's much easier to read for a beginner. When you are a beginner and you see lots of notes squashed in very tightly, first of all, it's very hard to see the rhythm, which notes go with which ones, and it's much harder for the brain to process so much in a short space or a small space, instead of it being laid out nicely like in this book. So that's why this one is my favorite for beginners, because the music is laid out and it's much easier to read for beginner and intermediate students. If you're an advanced student, you're not going to struggle so much with that, but if you're a beginner, it's going to make a big difference to your progress and how much time you spend reading the music. Now let me give you another example, which is from IMSLP. Here is Mozart's C Major Sonata. This is from IMSLP, and this one again is Alfred's Masterworks. Now look at this page. Very dense. Look how many notes. And the exact same is here. So these two pages are the exact same as this one. Which one would you rather read? And another big difference is that in the Alfred's editions, when you have ornaments, for example, here you have this trill, you have this little grace note, it shows you in light gray how it's supposed to be played. So it doesn't tell you to play it exactly like that, but it gives you something to grab onto if you've never played a trill before, or if you've never played an ornament, or if you've never played an ornament in Mozart's music before. It gives you a starting point that you can use, which is never in the IMSLP scores, because these older versions did not include any notes on ornaments and performance, because they just assumed that everybody would know it. So these are the biggest differences between these editions, and that's why this one is my favorite, because it has so much information about the piece, how to play it, historical information, but it's much better laid out than the ABRSM one for beginners. If you're an advanced student and you play very big pieces and you're looking for a very true to original, authentic score, because some of the ones on IMSLP are very heavily influenced by the time when they were published, then again, this could be a very good choice, the Alfred. But Henle Verlag this is something called Urtext, which means that it's the original music. So they don't add anything that wasn't in the original manuscript score of the composer. And they have entire catalogs of big composers like Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, Haydn, and so on. And these companies basically have the entire life work of all of these composers. So if you're looking for any kind of piece, they will have the original score. Henle Verlag, it's this color blue. And there is another one, I think it's German as well, not Austrian, German, Bärenreiter. And this one is a lighter blue, and it's the exact same idea, but they have a lot of orchestral works as well. I think actually Henle Verlag has that too, but I have a lot of operas from this company, vocal reductions and all of that. So if you're looking for Urtext, for authentic original scores without any kind of editorial notation, then these two are the best. They are not cheap and they are not always accessible from everywhere. So you can't always find these on Amazon. You have to go to specialist shops. But the Alfred, ABRSM, and Schirmer is available, I think, on Amazon and most music shops. I've been to quite a few in the US now, and I did see them there, and I did see them in the UK as well. So that's about classical. Now let's move on to pop music, because that's a little bit more tricky. First of all, when most people play pop music, they don't play it exactly according to sheet music. Many people jam along other people. So if you have a band, you have a drummer, a bass guitarist, and you play some keyboard or piano for them, then obviously you're not going to go after a sheet music. You're going to play according to a chord progression. You're going to improvise something. But let's say that you don't play in a band and you're kind of classically trained and you want to get sheet music for pop music and you want something to follow. And in that case, there are some collections by graded publishers like ABRSM, Trinity's Pop and Rock School piano exams, which have really good arrangements of pop music for easier grades as well as for higher grades, because most of the time you'll see the pop music found in its original form is very hard to play for beginners and intermediate students because the rhythms are so complex and the chords are quite big as well. So if you're a beginner, a very early beginner, or an early intermediate, you might want to have a look at those for kind of, authorized versions of those pieces. You won't find every single song, but if you look at a grade 2 book, at least you know that that's going to be manageable and you can play it exactly as written. You can always improvise when you play from pop sheet music, but you have something to start with. Now, if you're intermediate, late intermediate, or advanced, and you want to find any kind of pop sheet music, my number one source is musicnotes.com, and the second one is sheetmusicplus.com. Now, Sheet Music Plus I think they have a program where they allow anybody to publish music onto their platform. So you will find so many arrangements now, and many of them are complete utter rubbish. So it's much harder to kind of filter out what's good and what's not good, because for one song you'll find 50, 100 different piano arrangements, and who has the time and energy to get through so many arrangements? But on musicnotes.com, you'll find far less arrangements from random people. You'll find the official ones by certain publishers, but you'll find arrangements that you hear on YouTube from famous YouTubers. They usually have a contract with musicnotes.com. I have one with them too, where I publish choral music, and they are a lot more selective with what they allow on their platform, and therefore it's easier to select, and they have a very good player as well. So when you download a sheet music from their website, you can play it in their app, you can slow it down, you can speed it up, you can pick out certain bars. So they have quite a few resources to help you learn those pieces. And you can always listen to the original, because I think they have a YouTube video embedded on the product page. So quite a long video again, but there's so many sources for sheet music, and I really wanted to point out the differences between all of these publishers, IMSLP and musicnotes.com and all of those. Obviously, if you put a title into Google, very likely that it's going to come up with a few websites which are not legal copies. I can't comment on those because obviously that's by chance, but I know they do exist. But as a fellow musician, you should always support other musicians and pay for their music to use it, especially if it's modern music. If it's some of these older classical pieces, go onto IMSLP. All of those editions are going to be free if you're on a budget. If you have any more questions about these sources, leave them in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, subscribe for more.